from Straight Edge in Your Face, aka Kratom Kingdom. Anyway, today I wanted to talk to you about not what I normally talk about because YouTube is not very happy with it, and I'm never gonna get monetized if I keep talking about K. So I'm gonna try to talk about something very different and see if I can get a bigger audience, maybe younger people, maybe older people about my age who went through the same situations I did. So that's my explanation of what's going on. Anyway, I'm sure you saw by the thumbnail that I want to talk about something that's very, very important to me. It's called straight edge. And since I was 19 years old, which was about 40 years ago, I took an oath, a lifelong oath, that I would never drink alcohol, never take a drug, never smoke a cigarette, never have immoral or illicit sex. And since I was 19 years old, I have lived that life. Not only that, but I have been hardcore vegan. So there's many factions of straight edge. Straight edge is more complicated than just a movement, but that's what it was, a social movement made by kids. I mean, we were all under 20, and we were all usually skaters who listened to metal and rap, and then it eventually bands started punk, and then punk came into the scene, and most of the skaters that I knew anyway, we listened to punk. Bad Brains, Dead Kennedys, Operation Ivy, all the old school punk bands that made bands like Green Day and Blink-182, which are considered punk, but different punk. I mean, our punk turned into hardcore, which is when bands like the Bad Brains came out, and they influenced bands like Agnostic Front, Madball, H2O, Earth Crisis. I mean, all these old school hardcore bands, Youth of Today, Minor Threat. Again, all social misfits in high school, middle school. We were all the weird kids that the popular kids didn't really talk to because we dressed different. We were usually kind of not cool. I mean, I was a total nerd. I was a total gothic kid, I mean, long black hair, black eyeliner, all black clothes. And then we all started getting tattooed about that time, and we created something called a scene in our area of Florida. We were called Southside Straight Edge, and we got into straight edge because punk music turned into hardcore music, and hardcore music in different parts of the world started becoming very politically correct. I mean, you go to a punk show back then and you would see kids shooting heroin in the club, passing out, overdosing, and we just thought, that's stupid. And then Minor Threat, Ian MacKaye, wrote a song called Straight Edge. He said, I'm a person just like you, but I've got better things to do than sit around and fuck my head and hang out like the living dead. And that all kind of hit us, We were like, yeah, why are we gonna fucking be losers for the rest of our life? Let's change it. Let's change ourselves. Like, let's get stronger. Let's unify. And let's make a vow that we will never take a substance that will fuck our heads anymore, because we saw too many of our, living up so close to the ghetto, we saw too many of our friends get hooked on drugs and just end up on the streets selling their bodies, men and women, or boys and girls. And we were like, The biggest part for me, what really got me into it was, as we started this straight edge movement, we became more confident, and in high school we were the really different kids, alternative kids they called us, and we got invited to parties more, and we would go to these parties, and a whole bunch of us straight edge kids would go together, and we would see the popular blonde drunk cheerleader getting wasted, and then the popular football kids grabbing this girl and leading her into a bedroom and then gangbanging her. And then later she would be tormented for the rest of her life because of what these scumbags did to her. So we, the straight edge kids, used to hang out by the keg and watch those popular girls and watch the vulnerable drunk girls. And when we saw 2 or 3 football players taking them into a bedroom, we would follow right behind them and beat the holy shit out of those football players. You know, there might have been more of us, but these guys were breaking the law. They were raping a girl. I mean, how much more disgusting could you be? And so those girls were embarrassed, but very cool to us and started to appreciate us. And so more and more people started asking us to be bouncers at their parties, or so we became an asset to these parties with drunk people. And we didn't drink at all, so if somebody was too drunk to drive home, we would usually take their keys and drive them home, and then have another straight edge brother follow and pick us up and drive us back to our cars or whatever, or to the party. So because our nights lasted from sundown until sunup usually, going to different clubs, watching different bands, just hanging out, going to Denny's and drinking coffee all night, talking. And eventually we all started forming bands. And like I said, this band Minor Threat, they were a typical young punk band, but Ian MacKaye was a genius, and he wrote that song called Straight Edge, and which started a revolution. He won't admit it today because he is the epitome of what straight edge used to be. Still, he's a grown-up straight edge kid. He's my age, and he's, I don't know if he never claimed he was straight edge ever, but he still wrote many songs. I don't follow the crowd. I'm an individual, and straight edge just really looked at that and we were like, yeah, that's cool. So we started bands, and our bands were very straight edge. Some of us were very militant, and if you came into a club with a straight edge band playing and you were smoking a cigarette on the dance floor, which most people today call it a mosh pit, but which I always thought was kind of silly. It was a dance floor to us, to the hardcore kids, because we just had a different way of dancing. We weren't dumb metalheads just running across the room ramming into each other thinking it was fun and randomly being a skinhead just standing there punching long hairs. So we as the straight edge hardcore kids used to we had our own style of dancing, which usually resembled martial arts, because we were always trying to better ourselves. We didn't drink, we were called poison free. We took no poisons into our body to fuck our brains or our bodies. So we were usually more physically fit, and we were drawn to things that would make us better and stronger, which was like the martial arts, boxing, MMA, and like one of my mentors in the scene in West Palm Beach, where I was from, named Rich, he actually moved up north and became an MMA fighter and did pretty well. And then he had a family, a kid, and to this day he still claims straight edge and he still takes the oath. And but I was in 3 or 4 different straight edge bands, and after I came of age and got married, I went to college, and I always wanted to be a teacher because I always wanted to make a change for the future of our world. I always wanted to do something good for the world, and being a teacher, and especially being a straight edge teacher, all tattooed up and earrings and nose ring and lip ring and other rings that I won't talk about. Who's a kid gonna listen to you? whoever said just say no or dare to keep, that shit was cool, and we were glad it was there, but it was very ineffective. But we were the outcasts at school. Everybody made fun of us. We go to parties and not drink, and then all of a sudden we were physically fit. We were in bands, and the bands got cooler and cooler. We started recording at record label, in studios, and record label deals, and the high school kids started listening to harder bands, like Anthrax, DRI. Those bands were called crossover bands. Then a band called Biohazard came out, which was a very big crossover. They were hardcore kids like us from New York, from Brooklyn, I guess, or the Bronx. I don't remember exactly. It was like 40 years ago. And and all these bands started being played on the radio, and so popular kids started listening to it, especially popular kids who were listening to heavy metal, and so they started going to our shows and trying to hang out with us and be part of our clique, and some of them, if they were cool, we'd let them in, but we didn't ever just beat people up to beat people up. The only time I beat somebody up to beat somebody up was because they were on the dance floor and they were smoking a cigarette and they burned me in the face. And I was like, I asked him, I'm like, dude, put out your cigarette. And he's like, fuck you. And I just went, fuck you, pop. Broke his nose, and then about 10 other straight edge kids. That's the one thing about straight edge kids. We couldn't watch one of us get injured or hurt or ganged up on. So after 5 or 6 of the drunk, smoking kids surrounded me to beat my ass because I broke one of their friends' nose and jaw, about 40 straight edge kids surround the whole floor, and they knew they were outnumbered, so we just asked them to leave, and they did. And if they didn't, there would be an all-out war in that club. Chairs thrown, fists thrown. Then eventually gang members started coming in, bringing guns and knives and thinking they were all that, And so we focused more on our mental strength, our physical strength, and our purity of body and soul. We didn't even eat meat because we thought it was doing harm to the world. Animals had rights too. Gay people had rights. And so my band in particular, every time we'd play, we would have a rainbow flag behind us, which would really, really, really piss off the neo-Nazi skinheads that would come to hardcore shows, because it was the kind of music that they liked, that aggressive, in-your-face kind of music. And so anyway, fast forward 10 years, I was 30 and had a master's degree in education, so I started teaching. And my classrooms, my students knew who I was. Half of my students knew my band, Red Roses for a Blue Lady, and were like, dude, Mr. Irving, were you really in that metal band, Red Roses for a Blue Lady? I'm like, yeah, that was me. And they're like, that's you on this album? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, what's up with that? How did you become such a nerdy looking teacher? Because I wore glasses, I had hair, and wore long sleeves every day because I would never disrespect a school with. And I really respected the system of education. And I wanted to grab these kids for the right reasons. And I would eventually talk to them about what straight edge was and who I was and why I'm straight edge and why I'm a 30-year-old adult and I still don't drink alcohol with the other teachers. And they eventually saw that I was cooler than the other teachers, which made me very, very popular in the school. I won Teacher of the Year 2 years in a row. And whenever there would be a problematic kid in the school, who was not doing well, getting caught up in drugs and alcohol, the principal knew me very well, knew my beliefs, knew my ideologies. So she'd ask me to mentor him, and I'd hang out with him, take him to a show, take him out to dinner, introduce him to vegetarian food, and eventually that kid would see that you didn't have to do all this negative bullshit to be cool. There was another way. And the kids that hung out with me, like at lunch, because I was the teacher. We had a teacher lunch table that we were supposed to sit at and watch over the school, all the rest of the lunch tables. Well, I would look for that kid at the lunch tables that was sitting by himself, an empty chair on both sides, and I'd go and sit down next to that kid and eat lunch. The teachers are like, "What are you doing? You can't do that. You're not a student." I'm like, "Yeah, but this guy's alone, man, and he's not doing well. He's not gonna do well. I was that kid when I was in school, so I know what he's going through. So I'm gonna go to hang out with him." And I would hang out with him. Then other kids would start sitting near us, and eventually, little Bobby, who was sitting alone, is now sitting with me and all the popular kids, and his life changed. I eventually found out he played guitar. And then I found another kid in school that played guitar. Then another kid in school that listened to heavy metal music that played bass. I'd get all these kids together, and after school in my classroom, we'd move everything out of the way. And I started a music club. And a couple of hardcore bands formed out of this music club. And I would go to their shows at clubs, or at the little... it was a really small town, really rural, small town in North Carolina. And, then they would see me fully tattooed, no shirt on, usually. Just who I really was, how I dressed at home. And at the shows, they were like... Then more of the popular kids started coming, so now these nerdy kids that were in my music club started to become the popular. It just changed the whole scene of the school, and it was awesome, and I, to this day, in 2003, I had a massive stroke, which broke half of my brain, and paralyzed me on the entire left side, messed up my brain, made it so I had to retire from teaching, which was one of the saddest things I ever had to do, because I missed those kids so much. And I was really good at my job, and I was doing it for the right reason, to change the world, and if you're going to change the world, if you don't like the system... I hated school. I hated teachers. I hated cops. I hated everything. And, so I decided to join the system and change it from the inside. And I did. I made a huge difference on that school. When my kids went from 8th grade to high school, they would start putting X's on their hand, which is the universal sign for straight edge. And if you saw another kid with an X on his shirt or an X on his hands, you knew that he was straight edge. And if you were straight edge, you were instantly friends. And so then all these kids X'd up, started listening to the music that we listened to in the 80s, the original straight edge hardcore bands. Youth of Today, Minor Threat, Cro-Mags to some extent. I mean, they weren't really a straight edge band, but they did preach, or they lived a straight edge lifestyle. The main singer today, called John Joseph, was an amazing hardcore singer with the scariest band I had ever seen. I mean, they all looked like a bunch of Neanderthals. They were buff. I mean, he went to the Navy, and rumor was he became a SEAL. And then when he got out of the Navy, he's my age, 54, and has done something like 36 Ironmans, which is the hardest race you can run. And he's opened vegan restaurants. He lived in a Hare Krishna temple for a while as a monk, because when you're straight edge, what's the next step? Being a monk, because we were basically monks without any religious ideology. So he went to a Krishna temple and lived with them as a Hare Krishna monk for a couple of years and took on a lot of their philosophies. And a lot of their philosophies were vegan food, love, peace, harmony, doing things for the right reason, being good people. And he is a very good person. He's written several books. He goes around and preaches. And I was fortunate because I got to hang out with him when my band opened for his band. And I got to meet this legend, which would be like if you got to meet Jimi Hendrix or something, if you're from the baby boomer generation. But I was from Gen X, and our heroes were a little different. And I never took it militant. I was never like, I'm not going to talk to you if you drink a beer. I hung out with, my best friend was my cousin, and she drank. And we would go out, and I would watch her get drunk, and we would go to clubs and dance. And then, and she was one of the popular cheerleader kind of girls, We used to call them bops. And she was a bop, and I was a alternative kid, I guess you could call us, because we were different than everybody else. And when we became old enough to get tattooed, we started representing our straight edge crews by tattooing it on our body. Because 90% of the time you go into a club to a hardcore show, you're taking off your shirt, and who you are is tattooed all over your body. I've got straight edge tattoos on my back, on my legs, on my chest, on my arm. I've got straight edge tattoos everywhere because I wanted to rep my crew. And I wanted everyone to know that, yeah, I'm in this metal band, this really aggressive metal band that you would see on MTV guzzling Jack Daniels on the stage, and I don't do nothing. And if you're a girl and you liked me, I'm not going to go home and have sex with you just because for a one-night stand, because straight edge kids weren't like that. We were politically correct. We respected women and thought that those pigs that would use their popularity to go have a one-night stand with a really hot girl and then toss her aside the next day was bullshit. We were totally against that. I'm still totally against that. And me being as politically correct as I was split me apart from my family. Like, my mom and dad were baby boomers from the 40s who went through the 60s with the drugs and the alcohol, and my dad, till the day he died, smoked weed. And he was sad that he never got to smoke weed with me, his oldest son. And but I was okay with that, and he was eventually became okay with it and became very proud of me because I was a good person. Like him, he taught me to help anyone that needs help. If you see an underdog, you help that underdog, otherwise you're not a man. And sorry, I don't know why my nose is so itchy. It's not from nose candy, I promise. I've never done that in my life. Never would. So after I got sick, I started having to take a lot of prescription medications, and the hardcore militant straight edge kids called me a sellout, which is somebody who was straight edge who now drinks and puts poison, smokes and does drugs. And the thing is, when you're a sellout, you're embarrassed around all your old straight edge friends who are still living the life. So you make fun of straight edge more, and you're very sarcastic. You'll say that you're zero edge or you're crooked edge or something stupid. And to me, I thought they should get their straight edge tattoos removed, because if you're not now, you never ever were. And I believe that with the bottom of my heart, because straight edge was a lifelong oath. And it's an oath doesn't mean anything if you don't believe in the oath for life. And so a lot of those kids hated me because I really believed that if you decided to do drugs and stuff after you took the oath and put the tattoos on and wore the shirts and hung out with us, then the oath wasn't real, therefore your straight edge was never real. Therefore you were never really straight edge to begin with. You were just a poser who wanted to hang out with the cool kids. And so we made it cool, our 200 to 300 to 500, and then it went nationwide. I mean, it started in New York City, went to California with bands like Mean Season and Unbroken, who were a different form of music. It was still hardcore and metal, but they still preached about straight edge. And then a band from Syracuse, New York came out and blew up and went on MTV called Earth Crisis. And they were more on the animal liberation front side of straight edge, and they wrote a song called Firestorm that made kids militant. I mean, it was a very militant song. If you're not like me, I'm gonna fuck you up. And I didn't dig that. I mean, I liked the band Earth Crisis. I liked their messages, but I didn't like that militant side of them. I mean, it got a lot of us in trouble because they would preach to go to really expensive fur stores, which we lived in Palm Beach County, so we'd go to Palm Beach and go to these really expensive high-end fur shops where they sold fur coats and splash ink all over them and just destroy the coats so they couldn't sell them. And a lot of us got in trouble, which I was never down for getting in trouble. I mean, I was in it for the PC aspect of it, for the politically correct, for, or they would go out and boycott in front of McDonald's and stuff, which I always thought was kind of silly because all we're doing is making ourselves look stupid. I mean, if people choose to eat meat, that's their sustenance. We're not going to change 10,000 years of dietary habits just because we're a bunch of 19-year-old kids with X's on our hands who believe otherwise. I mean, there was no evidence yet that eating a vegetarian diet was better for you than eating a diet rich in animal meat, or that animals do feel pain, the animals do suffer in farms. So I kind of split out of straight edge at that point and went to college and became an academic. I still listened to the music, still had the beliefs, but I didn't preach anymore. I quit going to hardcore shows and fighting all the time and stuff, and I became a man. Like, most of my friends that were straight edge 20 years ago are still straight edge today, and we're still cool. But none of them are militant anymore. I mean, even the most militant ones that actually survived through the great straight edge demise still aren't militant. They're still, they took the academic route too, and we all got degrees, and some of us in philosophy, and started following philosophies of Hindus and Muslims and, just the people whose viewpoints with drugs and alcohol and the purity of the body kind of aligned up with ours. And there's a lot of religions like that. Christianity is not one of them. I mean, Christianity openly gives kids wine in church, and why would you do that? I mean, why would the blood of your Savior be wine, an alcoholic beverage that fucks your head? Never understood it, never believed it, never partook in it, even though when I was born I was baptized a Christian, and my mom did everything she could to get me to go through communion, and I just never did. Didn't like the idea of drinking alcohol even as a kid, because I saw what it did to my dad when he would come home drunk and pass out and yell and scream and be an asshole. So that's what straight edge is. And well, anyway, the point of all of this is, after I had the stroke, I was obviously prescribed a lot of medications, and the militant straight edge kids that were more on the Earth Crisis side of it would call me a sellout and a poser. And so I was like, fuck yeah, I've been straight edge since 1988, and you're gonna call me a sellout? You're gonna call me a sellout? I mean, I was in this from the very beginning. I groomed more straight edge and built up the scene, have been in more straight edge bands than any of you militant assholes, fascist assholes. And so But because I didn't, the side effects of some of this prescription medications were pretty hardcore and I didn't like it. So I would try to always find an alternative medication. And I did. And one of the alternative medications, I'll just call it K, is a tea that I would drink. And it got rid of my anxiety, my depression, my aches and pains, which took away so many. I was on 22 prescription medications at one time, which cost me a hell of a lot of money. And then I started finding alternative sources for my problems. And now I'm down to 4 medications. And none of them are controlled substances. And none of the holistic medications that I take are controlled as of yet. They're trying to. Certain states have controlled those substances and made it so certain ages can only get it. And that's because it works, and it fucks with the pharmaceutical companies, who are now going to lose money because, well, now we have an anti-pain reliever that's not morphine, that's not a narcotic. What are we going to do about that? We're going to make it a controlled substance, just like narcotics are, because that way we can continue to sell our oxycodone and hydrocodone. That's fucking up America, fucking up kids more than anything in the world, and I'm not down with that. So I dedicated this channel 100% to KT. And those of you who have been watching my channel for the last 3 years know what KT is. If you continue to watch this channel, subscribe to it, and become a member of it, then eventually you'll figure out what I take to get off of all of my other prescription medications. That's why I'm going to make this video for kids too. There should be no age limit on it, because I'm not preaching about that tea that goes against these arbitrary YouTube community policy procedure bullshit. It's not a harmful substance. It's been used for thousands of years by indigenous people in Southeast Asia. I'm not preaching like Native American mushrooms or mescaline or MDA or anything like that, because that stuff is now sold on the street. And definitely not talking about the other K that psychiatrists are now starting to use, and it was a date rape joke. I'm not talking about that junk at all. Don't want nothing to do with it. I was offered it for my mental problems, but it's a horse tranquilizer, for God's sake. And I don't want anything to do with psychedelics. I don't want anything to do with any drug still to this day. So I only stick to plant herbs. I believe there are straight edge kids in California that use cannabis because it is a natural herb that's grown from the ground, that is a medicine, that has been a medicine for thousands of years before our modern pharmaceutical companies came into control of our health and started fucking us up one by one in the name of profit. I'm very anti-pharmaceutical because when they put narcotics and morphine and prescribed them like candy to people, it created more of an epidemic than the heroin epidemic, because they were cheaper, easier to get. And I just saw so many of my friends, so many kids on the streets selling their bodies to get these pills. Hate it. Don't want nothing to do. Don't want anything to do with it. Sorry, I almost did a double negative, because since I've been living in the Appalachian Mountains, it's been really hard for me to maintain my proper grammar and articulate in a non-Appalachian way, I guess I'll say. I was taught in university and as a teacher, to present yourself as an intellectual instead of a gang member or somebody who doesn't know what a double negative is. And I'll stop there because I start preaching on education like crazy. Because that's my thing, my straight edge went to college. And in college, the thing there is let's go to join fraternities and sororities and party and go to clubs and watch girls get naked. Not me. I joined a band during that time when I was going to college at University of Florida, biggest party school in the country. Wet t-shirt contest every night, drunk, blonde, hot girls everywhere walking down the streets. And they would see us, the guys in the bands, the shaved heads and the tattoos, and think, oh, he looks dangerous. I want to hang out. I want to date him. Nah. I got married to a girl when I was 25 who said she was straight edge. Or that she wasn't straight edge when I first started dating her. But after hanging out with me and my friends for long enough, she was inundated with this no drugs, no alcohol. Before that, she was a little bop party girl who started listening to punk music because of one of her sisters and ended up hanging out with us. And as soon as we got divorced, she immediately started drinking beer, and God knows what she does. I don't know. I don't care. She's an ex, and I like to keep her that way because she never was who she said she was. She's a liar, a cheater, and yeah, I cheated on her. I did. I fully admit it. But that was after I found out she was having a 3-month relationship with a partner that she cycled with. This guy that was like 10 years older than me. And I was 5 years older than her. But he was wealthy. And he was really high up in... She liked hanging out with the guys that were high up in either the band scene or the straight edge scene or the hardcore scene or the bike scene. She's a mountain biker. And her now husband that she married the day after I signed the divorce papers. So she obviously was dating him. He moved in the day she kicked me out. I went to a hospital to spend 3 weeks because I was very depressed and having some bad thoughts in my head. So I turned myself into the hospital. And in that time I was gone, she started dating this guy. Told me we were still married. And she came into a meeting with me and all my social workers. We're going to find out what am I going to do when I leave this hospital to maintain a place to live. And she said, when you get home, you've got to move to your parents' house because we're getting a divorce. And here I am in a mental hospital because I'm depressed. Clinically, horribly, had come inches from ending my life, which is the last straight edge thing you can possibly do. And I'm very ashamed of myself for trying it. But mental health sucks. Since then, I went to and got a master's degree in neuropsychology, which is the actual biology of the brain. I know the brain probably better than I know anything, as well as I know a bass fretboard. And I played bass for 20 years and was one of the best bass players in our scene. So anyway, y'all, this is almost 40 minutes. I'm going to cut out here, and I hope you all have a good time. And I promise to all my older long-lasting subscribers that I'll get back to the original substance of this channel. But I need to try to branch out a little bit so that YouTube doesn't cancel me altogether. I would hate that because this is my life right now. Alright, peace out everybody. Love y'all.